In the Middle East, we have people chopping the heads off Christians. We have people chopping the heads off many other people. We have things that we have never seen before as a group. We have never seen before. I would bring back waterboarding, and I'd bring back a hell of a lot worse than waterboarding.
Donald Trump backing the use of enhanced interrogation techniques earlier this month during the Republican debate in New Hampshire. Today, he's doubling down on that position in an op-ed for USA Today. In part, he writes, "I have made it clear in my campaign that I would support and endorse the use of enhanced interrogation techniques. Though the effectiveness of many of these methods may be in dispute, nothing should be taken off the table when American lives are at stake." Let's discuss this now. And to do so, we welcome in from Newsmax Washington, former Defense Department spokesman JD Gordon. He's at JD Gordon Communications. Also joining us, Skyping in from Washington, former CIA analyst Fred Fleitz. Fred is currently the Senior Vice President for Policy and Programs at the Center for Security Policy. Gentlemen, we appreciate your time. Let's get your reaction. JD, first you. Do you agree with Donald Trump?
Yes, JD, I agree with Mr. Trump 100%. You know, there are CIA operatives who can tell you that we avoided other 9/11 style attacks in both Los Angeles and London because two detainees were waterboarded, Abu Zubaydah and Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, because they basically led to other detainees. That's how we stopped those plots. And the other thing, JD, is, you know, when I was the chief foreign policy advisor to Herman Cain's campaign and Governor Huckabee's campaign this cycle, I would always tell them on this subject, the CIA and the military ought to tell the president what works for interrogations and what doesn't work. It shouldn't be the other way around. President Obama is politicizing interrogations, and that's useless and just a way to get Americans killed.
Well, to be fair about it, it wasn't only President Obama. Fred Fleitz, I remember my days in Congress, and certain senators started to weigh in on this, including Republicans, trying to rule out enhanced interrogation. But let me ask you, as a guy who understands intelligence, JD pointed out a couple of specific cases. Do these enhanced techniques really work?
Well, I think they do work, JD, and former CIA Director Michael Hayden has been fairly clear about that. What I'm concerned about what Mr. Trump said is that he seems to want to go beyond enhanced interrogation. I don't think enhanced interrogation methods such as waterboarding constitutes torture, but I would not want to see the United States cross that narrow line between lawful enhanced interrogation and torture, and I hope Mr. Trump is not saying he would do that.
Well, let me ask you, JD, there is something known as a strategic, I'm sorry, I'm losing the term right here. It's where you fail to spell it out. You leave people guessing about what it is you will do. Strategic ambiguity, that was the term I was looking for. Is there something to be said for not going into great detail to keep our enemies guessing?
Yes, JD, I think so. You know, I think Mr. Trump is just trying to get the message out that he's going to be really tough on terrorists. Again, from my time on presidential campaigns, you have to reach the American people. So if you're getting caught up in a lot of details or what specifically you're going to do, you're going to lose a lot of people, number one. And number two, you're going to tell the enemy what you're going to do. So I think that's why Mr. Trump is doing it. It's crazy like a fox, if you will.
Only a couple of minutes left. We'll go from enhanced interrogation and politics here to that international cessation of hostilities that John Kerry was talking about a few short days ago. That hasn't shown up too well in Syria. Over 50 people killed in airstrikes. 7 schools and hospitals hit. One of the hospitals, supported by Doctors Without Borders, that organization, says those attacks were deliberately caused by Russia or Syria. Fred Fleitz, was what John Kerry telling us was going to happen with a cessation of hostilities, was that just a pipe dream?
That might be a good way to describe it. Kerry got what he was looking for last week when all the major newspapers said U.S. and Russia agrees to ceasefire. But what most of these press accounts didn't mention is that it's not going to take place for a week, and Russia will continue bombing. And what we recently saw over the last 48 hours, Russia apparently bombed a hospital in an area where there are no ISIS or al-Nusra terrorists, and Russia plans to continue to do this. I think because of that, this is a pipe dream. We're not going to see a cessation of hostilities.
JD, let me ask you about some freed hostages. We understand earlier today 3 of our citizens kidnapped in Baghdad last month were freed by the Iraqi intelligence services. Now, some analysts believe those kidnappings were meant to embarrass and weaken the Prime Minister of Iraq. Was that what was going on, or is it just the unpopularity of Americans? 20 seconds.
Well, yeah, I think, first of all, we have to redefine the U.S. citizens. These were 3 Iraqis who got U.S. citizenship and then apparently were hanging out at a brothel and then got themselves kidnapped by Shiite militia. So, of course, it's meant to embarrass Americans. But I tell you what, JD, we've got to be more stringent upon who we make U.S. citizens. Whether they're Iraqis or Iranians, their governments are going to try to capture them and make us look bad. And you know what? They're succeeding.
We will have to leave it there. JD Gordon at Newsmax Washington, Fred Fleitz Skyping in from the nation's capital. We thank you both very much. Up next, she sings, she barks, she's running for president. How does this all fit together? We'll have it for you when we come back.